Well, I just want to ask you some questions about stuff that matters to us because we're 30, and so you talk about 40 years with Judy, and you can talk about it like that. But at the time, was everything going? What was it like when you had kids for the first time? What was your experience of it at the time? How did it mesh with what you imagined your life to be like? And you know what I mean? How did your
Well, I would have to say it meshed very well
yeah.
with what I had thought. I mean, obviously we wanted to have kids.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody did those days, you
Yeah.
know. And she had an easy, Judy had an easy time with all three of the kids. Wasn't bad at all. No cesarean or anything. It was just natural birth, but not quite as natural as your mother. With the story on that with the midwives and all that. But there was no question we wanted kids, and when Barney was born, we were thrilled.
So it felt like as time was going on, it was just sort of this was playing out the way it was meant to. I would imagine when Judy got sick, that must have put a huge. That changes everything.
Of course.
Do you remember anything you want to share about that experience?
Yeah, I can tell you this. When Judy was diagnosed with breast cancer, it's a blow, obviously.
Which was about when? What year?
It was 1982.
And how old?
It was between the two weddings of 1982.
Okay.
Of Hillary and Dave's wedding and Barney and Rosie's wedding.
Okay.
In between that summer, she was diagnosed.
And how old are the kids? How old are Hillary and Dave?
It was 1982.
So.
My mom was 26.
Yeah, and Barney was 28.
Okay.
And Hillary was just married. She was
so everyone's adults.
Whatever was there.
Yeah.
And and then I met with the doctors often, and they told me what the plan was. For some chemo, but mostly radiation. They were not going to do a mastectomy. They were going to do a lumpectomy, which they did, and that seemed to work well. And to be very honest with you, the next 6-7 years, it was no more than a bad cold. Really. We'd go to chemo, and she'd want to eat on the way home. She never had one sick day from chemo. Not one.
Really?
Radiation, never any reaction to radiation. She had a lot of it. Never a reaction. And so we took it probably lighter than you would think. And she's going to lick it. That was my strong feeling. Oh yeah, she'll get over this. She'll lick this, yeah. And we did all that traveling during that time, pretty much a lot of it, during that time. And she was fine, and she never had a bad day. Never had a bad day. And being honest with what answering your question, and she never complained. She would never complain anyway. Never complained about a thing, never. And she, in her own mind, I thought she felt she had it. She was over the hill. She beat it, But unfortunately, it started to spread in 1987, 1988, about 5 or 6 years after she was diagnosed. And so the doctor was, the oncologist was pretty upset with that. He says it's spreading. I think it's attacking her lung lining, the lining of the lung. So we were on a trip in 1987. I told you about Holland, Belgium, France, and Ireland. We met some friends of ours over there. And I noticed she's walking slower than usual. She was very peppy, like that, but walking slower than usual. So we got home. We had her checked out by the oncologist, the doctor. That's when he said that it spread to a lung lining. And his prognosis was that, if we can contain it there with some chemo and radiation, she's going to be okay. And for a while it held true. But toward the middle of 1990, when Gail was diagnosed, Gail was diagnosed 6 months before Judy died. You imagine what a blow that was to Judy. And to Gail, of course. And it was tough, really difficult, knowing that your daughter now had breast cancer. But her spirits never flagged, never really flagged. And until I say about we moved to the beach in 1987.
In Oxnard?
In Oxnard. I wanted her to be closer to Gail and to Dari and Shane. You know, our 2 grandchildren. You know, Eric had been born in 1983, and
No, I was born in
he was a
1983.
baby.
I was
You
born
were
in
born in
83.
83. Eric was 87. You're right. Thank you. Can't have them all, you know. But it was just I wanted her to be nearer the grandchildren, and she loved that idea. So we left our place in Woodland Hills, and we got this little beach house down here in Oxnard. And she spent her last 3 years there, very happily, in the beach house. And she loved the ocean, always loved the ocean anyway. And we did daily walks and all of this kind of stuff. And then when it finally got to the point where she had to be taken to the hospital, it's the weekend she died.
Wow.
Until that, it was not a big thing to us. But I think the person who suffered more than anybody was Gail, because Gail was diagnosed 6 months before. I used to take the 2 of them to chemo sessions at St. John's Hospital in Oxnard.
I can't believe that.
They had the same oncologist, a woman oncologist, who had the chemo and the radiation, and I would drive them both there. So we used to try to get the appointments at the same time.
What did that feel like?
Well, it wasn't scary.
Yeah.
But it was strange, like mystical, sort of, almost mystical. I had to take them both to a wig shop one time after the chemo session. That was a blow. That was, you know, that was reality setting in, you know. And you know, your mother can tell you all about that. That was a tough time. It was a tough time. And then when she got her final spreading, and her oncologist pretty much gave up. And I just blew up at another oncologist. I mean, this oncologist who was pretty much said that there's nothing much we can do, tells me that, but not Judy. No way. So Judy and I went to see this other oncologist, who was also a woman, in Oxnard, to see what plan she might have. And she was also going to an oncologist in Santa Paula at that time, a gentleman. And so this woman said, looked at all her papers and all that. Well, she says, I've got to be honest with you, I don't see any hope. Wow. I mean, I went ballistic. Oh, Gail was with us at that time. Gail was with us, because Gail had been 6 months into diagnosis at that time. And so Gail and Judy, I said, take her out. She took Judy out of the office. And I gave that oncologist the biggest piece of my mind. I used every bit of language in the book. Really did. You imagine that? I said, how dare you talk that way? Well, she says, I was being honest. No, you weren't. You were being a damn fool. And then I went on from there, and I mean, I blew. Absolutely blew. I was shaking when I got out. And of course, Judy heard that. So, you know, I don't know what effect it had on her, because it was toward the end. And there was just no more chemo, no more radiation, nothing else could be done. I was just hoping against hope that this might be a way to break through. But it already spread, and once it spreads to the lung lining, then you know, there was nothing. And this is a long time ago.
Yeah.
Nothing much could be done.
All right, let's switch gears completely.
If there was a breast cancer and a Dr. Wiseman at that time, I think she'd still be alive. Very possible.
Let's talk about Barney.
Barney.
Let's talk about Barney, because we've heard stories about Barney and getting.
That's why I didn't want them over here today.
Getting woken up with water, you know, like the kid just like not being able to get out of bed. And
Barney was Jesse. Barney was the nicest person in the world.
Yeah.
He really was. But he was irresponsible. He was to a point, and he was on the fringe of the hippie movement. I'm sure he hit a few, and I'm sure Gail did. I'm sure they all did.
Hit a few what?
It didn't bother me at all.
Hit a few what?
Let it go, let it go.
Toke on a few. But you know, one thing during that whole period, that time, Judy and I didn't get nervous at it at all. We kept close tabs on it, and we tried not to get nervous. I always had Barney's friends over. And, you know, and Gail's friend doesn't matter at all. And I took them to see movies like MASH and places like that. Yeah. But and Barney was a special kind of a character. He gave up on school, though. He just didn't like school. His period like that. And he too, Jesse, said that he might want to take a year off. He never went back anywhere. And
Were you disappointed about that? Was that?
He did. Well, yeah. All I did at that time was give him some options of what he might want to do. And between Judy and I, we gave him some things that he could do. I said, you know, you're a good graphic artist. You want to go to art school? That was one. He wanted to take a what do you call it?
Painting?
Like an airbrush.
Airbrushing, yeah. And so I got him into an airbrushing school. He went to that. But music started coming into the picture about that time with him. And he's self-taught, as you know. And he started to really pay attention to music. So we just let him go. Let him go and went to all his shows we could in Santa Barbara, you know, and then he met Rosie. And in fact, he met Rosie, yeah, about that time. It was probably around 1975, 1976, about that time. And I went to Colorado to see the kids at camp. Gail was there, and Hillary was in a training camp, and Barney was he was a kitchen counselor, and Rosie was the kitchen counselor, kosher kitchen, and Rosie was running the kosher kitchen. And she's the sweetest girl, you know. And then they came home, and they lived in a van in Santa Barbara. In fact, when I did my hike up to Santa Barbara, they lived in a van on Yonanali Street in Santa Barbara. And they were happy, you know, they still are. Yeah. And I always tell people, and I'm not afraid to do this, I tell them, you know, the nicest people you'll ever want to meet in your life are Barney and Rosie. If you want to see where the 60s went, visit Barney and Rosie. And it's true, they are, you know, as Dari will tell you, and Jesse will tell you, and Gail and Hillary will tell you that. And Michael and Dave and everybody will tell you.
They kind of did it right.
Comedy nicer than that.
Yeah, they did it right.
So I'm proud of that. I really am. Not that I had anything to do with it, but I'm just proud of the fact that Barney has come out fine.
Yeah.
You can't push him. He's not going to do anything he didn't want to do.
When did you find that out? Do you remember a moment?
I found that out early. I really found that out. You're not going to get him to do anything. I said, you know, now that you're into music, why don't you do something with it? You know, do some recordings, join a band, and I'm doing my thing, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that you're in the family now has pushed him a little bit. Yeah, I got that feeling that you might have pushed him a little bit. But, you know, there were a few tough times when they were growing up,
yeah.
But nothing that I could even pinpoint. You know, it was the times. It was the times that they were going through. It was same in every family. I'm sure we had a lot less than any other family.
Yeah.
And
what was your neighborhood like?
Oh, we lived in some nice neighborhoods at the time they were growing up. We lived in Kittredge Street in Canova Park. We had a house was being built for us. That was the first house I bought.
Wow. With
the GI Bill here. And I sold my one on Massachusetts. And they loved growing up on Kittredge Street. And then we moved to DeGrasse. And it was a really nice place with a swimming pool and a whole bit. We had a really nice, they had nice parties there all the time. And
can you tell us about Spielberg? About those are some good stories.
Spielberg, he's in the picture. And you've probably heard the story 1,000 times, but yeah, we first met Stephen in 1957. When we finally moved to California with Rand in 57, the first people that came to our motel room was my cousin, Barney, and his boss, Arnold Spielberg. They were attending a conference, a computer conference. They both worked for GE. Barney was his assistant, Arnold Spielberg's assistant. And they knew, my mother had told them we were staying in this motel. We had just moved out here with the Rand Corporation. So sure enough, they phoned me and they came over to visit. And the first thing out of Arnold's mouth after he got to meet us and saw the cute kids, you know, Barney and Gail, they were adorable. They were just adorable. You've seen their pictures. They were so cute. Dari and Shane too, you know. Jesse, yeah. but first thing out of his mouth, Arnold says, "What are you doing for Thanksgiving?" I said, "No plans, we just got out here." He says, "You're coming to my house for Thanksgiving." Okay, that's fine. You don't have to twist my arm, you know. So we decided we would drive to Phoenix. That's what people were doing in those days. And the best way, and he had said, the best way to come to Phoenix is at night, instead of running into the desert traffic or anybody, 2-lane roads, you know. Come at night, put the kids to sleep in the back seat and come at night. No seat belts in those days at all. So we put Barney and Gail, wrapped them up in a blanket and a little sponge or something in the back, and they went to sleep.
A sponge?
A sponge?
What do you mean by sponge?
Huh?
A sponge? What do you mean by a sponge? You mean a pillow? You said you wrapped him up with a blanket and you gave him a sponge.
No, they slept on one of these sponges.
Oh, like a
Oh.
foam.
Yeah, sponge
okay.
pad. Get out of here. So,
Sorry.
I thought for hydration
So,
they had to suck on the wet sponge.
we get there at 6 o'clock in the morning to their house.
Wow.
We had the address. And Stephen knew we were coming, and he knew what time we were going to leave LA at 11 or whatever it was, and we'd be there at 6 o'clock in the morning. So we pull into the driveway. Barney and Gail are still kind of sleeping in the back seat, and then Judy and I were tired. We're really tired. We switched off driving, but boy, we were tired. That's a long way. And the kids were great, though. They slept right the whole way. We drive, and this is the story that I wrote up. We drive into the driveway, and this little kid comes out, standing there, looked like an alien from some foreign planet, with ears out to here, flapper, ears out to here, and he's got an 8mm camera. I didn't know it was an 8mm camera, and he screams at the top of his high voice, "Don't get out of the car! Don't get out of the car!" Okay, we're traveling all night long. He said, "When I tell you to come out, I'll go like this. Then you can come out." The kids had by this time woken up and they're a little cranky. We'd get them the hell out of the car, you know. So he finally gives us a signal. He's shooting this the whole time. And we get out of the car and he said, "Now you can take the kids too." So we took the kids out of the car. He said, unbelievable.
How
you know.
old was
And
he?
Gail was all of 1 year old and Barney was 3. And that whole weekend, we were there from like Tuesday to Sunday, the whole long weekend. You know, I was with Rand at that time, plenty of vacation time. And that whole weekend, he was pestering the hell out of everybody with that camera. I'm ready to wrap him on a camera, you know. Good God. I came out of the shower one time, and he's there full front with the camera. She's unbelievable. He's everywhere that whole weekend.
So
And
wait,
we're ready to strangle him. I mean it.
Arnold's his dad.
That's Arnold's camera.
Okay, and he's related. You're related to Arnold.
He's related to Bernie.
You're related to Bernie.
Lee and Arnold.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking.
No, not related to them. My cousin Bernie married Lee
Got it.
for 32 years. So that's how the cousinhood came in. Not through Arnold. Arnold's not a cousin.
Yeah.
And neither was Lee, really, but you know, call him that. But that whole weekend, this guy was the biggest pain in the neck. I was ready to handcuff him to the slide out front or something.